spannend.
Jetzt ist
Ja.
da hat sie schon angefangen.
Doro, bist du da? Hallo. Hi.
Ihr hört mich.
Ja, ich höre dich. Aber dein
Ja?
Bildschirm sehe ich, also dein Bild sehe ich nicht.
Ich habe es eigentlich gerade schon freigeschaltet.
Ganz so lange
Jetzt geht das hier irgendwie nicht mehr. Also vorher konnte ich auf dieses Icon drücken, um das freizuschalten. Jetzt geht's nicht mehr.
Aber ihr wollt das eigentlich entweder vorher machen oder jetzt mit der Kamera reden, gell?
Ja,
Ja.
genau.
Also.
Du mal das Publikum begrüßen, sie muss nochmal versuchen.
Okay, ja, probier's doch einfach nochmal.
Sonst nochmal rausgehen, nochmal reingehen.
Vielleicht nochmal raus und dann wieder reingehen. Vielleicht funktioniert das.
Warte kurz, das konnte ich gerade wieder. Es sagt, Medium doesn't reach the server.
Du musst dir deinem System erlauben, auf die Kamera zuzugreifen. Da kommt ein Pop-up-Fenster, wenn du reingehst.
Habe ich eigentlich.
Ja?
Ich versuche es nochmal, ich gehe nochmal raus. Okay. However that works. Was ist das eigentlich für ein System, was ihr hier habt?
Shanice, sag mal was zu den Leuten.
Wir können aber nochmal so zurückspulen.
Keine Ahnung. Ich probiere es mal.
Okay, bis gleich. Okay.
Jetzt kannst du die Leute begrüßen.
Hello everybody. Welcome back to another talk to this Fashion Revolution Week. Today we're talking with Dorothee from DS AGCY in Berlin. We'll be talking about why fashion is a manifesto of today's global issues and what kind of problems we see along the supply chain.
Who are you?
I'm Shanice, I'm from Fashion Revolution Zurich. I'm a co-coordinator of this week's Fashion Revolution Week and I'm very glad to be here. So, we're just waiting for Dorothee for her audio and video to work and then we're going to start our talk.
Hi.
Hello!
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you but I can't see you right now.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why, but it doesn't allow me to join with the camera.
Yeah? Then we'll talk like that, I guess.
Okay, I can keep trying if you want to, but I'm able to do everything, and it's just, it doesn't really let me. It says audio can't connect somehow. It doesn't reach the server, it says.
I'm not too familiar with the system, but maybe
Maybe
someone
that's
here in the
right.
room has.
Talk, huh?
Just talk.
Just
Okay.
talk.
So we'll just talk in that case. Okay,
Okay,
so
I'm super sorry for that.
no worries. Yes, like I said, I mean, fashion polarizes, and more than ever, it highlights many socio-economic and environmental problems along the supply chain. And this is why we're talking today. So I was thinking at first maybe you introduce yourself, tell a little about what you're doing, and give us maybe a roundup of the problems that you see along the supply chain.
Yeah, perfect. First of all, sorry again that you literally can't see me right now. So that's a bit awkward, but we will try to make that work, I guess. Yeah, I'm Dorothee. I run an agency called DS AGCY, and what I'm focusing on is basically two different parts of working with the fashion supply chain. Is first of all the very nitty-gritty technical details. I work a lot with compliance, with sustainability in terms of supply chain transparency, textile compliance in terms of certifications, for example. I've been working with Dorothee, which is a huge certification body, global certification body for a couple of years now. And just highlight or make a point in making all the information about what do certificates, what does supply chain transparency mean, a bit more accessible. And then on the other hand, because as I said, it's very nitty gritty, it's very technical, and I need some fun now and then. That's a little bit like more contemporary, more easy. Again, I just do a lot of educational stuff and I curate events, meaning either, let's say, pop-up pop shops or something for trade shows where I curate selections of sustainable fashion brands. But sometimes also I write for sustainable publications, or I work with companies on strategy when it comes to sustainability communication.
Abstand, ja. Es ist aggressiv, Mann.
That's basically what I do.
Gang weg.
Sorry, we just had some technical issues
You
here.
muted? You were now
Sorry.
unmuted.
Sorry, we just had some technical issues here.
Sofort.
Sofort. Yeah, very interesting. It seems like you're doing very various work for many.
Hey.
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Okay, yeah, it should work again now. So, yeah, like you said, you're working with.
Mach einfach weiter.
Is it okay?
So yeah, so now it's okay. Sorry. Okay, so like you said, you're working with so many different people and certifications, and you travel a lot, or you travel to these places where fashion is manufactured. So, what are for you the problems that you see that we really have to tackle in the fashion industry?
Well, I guess to be honest, first of all, I think there's a bunch. There's like a lot of problems, and there's a lot of things going on, and I think that is one thing that's also very confusing, right? When we say what do we have to change, what do we need to tackle, what is sustainability? I think basically everyone can kind of pick it that's close to their hearts. So there's people that are very much into their whole climate change. What does it mean? What's pollution doing to the earth? What is their digital environmental impact on the fashion production? And that's like kind of one camp, Then there's people being way more into biodiversity, the whole soil health, regenerative farming. All of this basically on the where does the basic raw material come from? How do you ensure that that is something that is safely and balanced done? And that's another camp of people. And I'm personally, I've always been a people person. So I really I'm really, really worried and really into working with the more social dynamics. And that is from literal, very basic human rights to feminism to, especially now also in times of the global pandemic, feeling health and safety. How do people feel that have to go into a factory and still produce if they are not locked down? And how is social distancing done there? How is it made that people don't have to fear for their life when they go to work, and that they feel equally treated mentally, physically, in all ways?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we're talking here is more than just a human rights issue. It is. It tackles so many different problems or areas, like you said, feminism, or also anti-racism movements. If we, I mean, you're saying that, like you said, people go into different areas of sustainability, and for you it's more the social factor. Do you think people do enough in that factor, or do you think they're acting more when it comes to environmental problems and sustainability?
Well, I would say fashion, no, other way around. Sustainable fashion and sustainability, this buzzword, it emerged in a way where it's a trend, right? And I don't want to sound cynical, because I'm not one of those people who's like, oh yay, canceling culture, and let's be super horrendous when it comes to corporations doing efforts or something like that. So But I see and I know that it's a trend, it's a buzzword. You put it on something and suddenly it sells, or it continues to grow. So the question if you do more environmental stuff or more social stuff is, for me at least, immediately linked to what's on the global trend perspective now. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing that came up right now, that from Adidas to every smaller brand to every performance outdoor brand, every second shoe, you see recycle, recycle, recycle. You know, I think if I look through the request, or if I look through just my Instagram feed alone, and I'm aware that it's a very sustainably curated Instagram feed because that's how our world works. But if I scroll through that, I can literally like probably kill myself with 20 different bags that are made out of like ocean plastic bottles,
Mm-hmm.
biggies. It's
Yeah.
a trend.
Yeah.
And so this is
Totally.
the thing right now. This is why we do so much about it right now. But I definitely feel, and it sounds horrible in a way to say that the social dynamics will be the next thing where people have a really, really close look at. Because the whole Corona thing, the whole COVID thing, mm, suddenly, if you look at headlines, even of like mainstream publications like newspapers and stuff, but also of publications like Vogue and Business of Fashion that were usually very glam focused, they talk about garment workers that haven't been
Yes.
paid in Bangladesh. So
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, this is the thing where we consider, oh, this was there too. It's not only about the turtle and the plastic bottle; it's also about the, I don't know, young mother in Bangladesh who can't feed her kids anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've really come into an age of wearable activism. We can call it that. But
Yeah.
like you said, or I've been thinking a lot about the fact that, I mean, fashion always tries to mirror the zeitgeist, and what happens is we have T-shirts saying feminist or Black Lives Matter running down the runway, but then again, those T-shirts sell for like 700 euros or whatever, and the money goes back into the company and doesn't water down to the garment workers or anyone along the supply chain who had anything to do with it. So it's just, yeah,
But that's,
it's
in
feeding
my
the
opinion,
system.
that's you can see that on a lot of different levels, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny that you just say that because first of all, I had the conversation yesterday with a really close friend of mine who works in sustainability too. She works in the States with that, and she says the same. Like suddenly, people will ask us, sustainability professionals who are around since a couple of years actually, we will get requests by brands that are inherently and absolutely not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ask you like, do you want to do a cooperation? And yeah, of course, sure, because I love to pay rent, so that's a cool thing. But on the other hand, it's like, where can you wholeheartedly have sustainability start and stop it? Because what you just said, it's a 700 euro T-shirt. They flag it with sustainability or political activism, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely doesn't go back in anything or in any direction of vulnerable individuals, because the garment workers are not the ones that are getting paid triple suddenly, and if still, and Black Lives Matter, yay, definitely, but and diversifying this fashion business, definitely yay, but that's a visibility thing. If you look at the statistics about
Yeah.
C-level jobs, board members, etc., it's still very much the same white toast
Mm-hmm.
bros you find
Yes.
everywhere.
Definitely. I've been reading up on that as well, and I've seen that, I mean, especially in communities or in places like the States, the representation is just not there yet. And it's kind of still it's just worsening the situation in some places, I think, as long as no one, as long as not enough people represent it. Sorry.
Okay. It's a hard word. It's a hard thing.
Yeah, but I think then again, people are waking up. They're still not fully aware of what they're buying into, but they're getting the grip of it. They're kind of starting to understand the consequences of what the impact is of what you buy, or what can be the impact. And I think it's very interesting to see how people are changing.
Definitely, and it's also, look, with all the different fractures, or with all the different parts of the sustainability puzzle, if that's what we just said, the environmental part or the like political activism, feminism, how do you like basically the everything that has to do with an impact. I feel we are in a moment right now in a culture, in a zeitgeist, where it's very much like, let's not cover shit up, you
Mm-hmm.
know Like it was okay 5 years ago and
Yeah.
more even like 10 years ago to just like shush stuff, you know, if shit hits the fan in your company, if your CEO is a little bit racist or a little bit sexist here and there, you just put some money and just throw some money at it and it's a done deal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel there is less tolerance for compromises right now, luckily, both on people who work in the industry or for that matter in a bunch of industries. I don't think it's only our industry, and
Mm-hmm.
also on the consumer end. But the question, and this is something that I ask myself a lot, and I think everyone who works with this should ask themselves that is this only what I'm seeing because I'm so linked to this mindset and this business, so I'm most likely connect with people who share the same, even if it's globally, they have a like-minded mindset, or is it really a global shift? Because we are just a small bubble, right?
Yes, but I'm asking myself the same questions, and I always, or let's say, from my bubble, or most of the people I'm friends with, they don't work in the fashion industry. So it's very interesting always for me to see if the issues I'm confronted with also water down to people who aren't in the industry. I do think it's happening a lot more. I mean, also, or one big aspect I see is that the stores that they used to go to buy their clothes now also offer sustainable options.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I just, for example, and I'm really not a big fan of H&M, because I think a lot of stuff that they do is straight up greenwashing.
mhm.
Um, but I mean, I guess that's something that you mean with that, right? Because suddenly you walk into H&M, and I read recently that they either already introduced it or will introduce, for at least some of their stores, that you can, for example, you can rent men's suits.
Mhm.
You can
Yeah, I've
rent
read
them,
that.
and
Yeah.
that's pretty. I mean, you can just say, okay, it's another teeny tiny thing that they do, and it's greenwashing, and it distracts from the actual supply chain issues because it
Yes.
puts, and it's very much a discussing of, okay, oh, okay, so again they don't look at their own supply chain, but they put their whole like responsibility on the consumer. So now the poor guys who are already lost with what should they buy for a wedding have the option to rent it. Oh
Mhm.
my god, you know. So you can go like this, and I get it, and it's true, but on the other hand it's also, oh, so someone who really gives a damn about sustainability walks into H&M now and sees that this is possible. Maybe if we are lucky and just one person out of 100 gets a thought of train going, you know?
Yes, exactly. But I think that's
Best case
probably the.
scenario.
I mean, there's a, or at least I think there's a consumer led demand, or it is led by rights and governmental restrictions. So what we see, or what I think is what we see with H&M, etc., is a consumer-led demand, because consumers ask for more sustainability, and that is so difficult to, or in that case, it's almost impossible that it will water down to people along the supply chain. So I think probably one of the solutions should be is that also more happens on a governmental or international platform, like you. Sorry.
I totally agree. I
Yeah.
completely agree here.
So yeah, I've read that Germany now also has the Lieferkettengesetz, or soon will have. So I'm hoping that will change maybe a little bit for the local fashion industry in Germany. Or what is your opinion on that? Is it enough, or is it just maybe a good start?
It's just getting started. I don't think it's even passed yet fully.
Yeah.
I think it has very much pushback yet. To be quite honest, okay, to be super, super honest here, and I always do that in the sense of, I mean, I work in sustainability, I don't cover things up. I live in Berlin, right? And a big part of this Lieferkettengesetz is originated here. Like some of the players who kind of, came up with it.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it's never something where I fought for, where I was like, oh, I totally want to get involved. Not because I don't believe in it, because I do, and I think it's a good first step, but I think we have to be realistic here. And in my opinion, it's first of all, yeah, Germany has a lot of economical like entanglements, and there's a lot of big trade and big production that is linked to Germany. But I think it should be bigger even.
Yeah.
I personally think if you don't do that stuff on EU level or on a somehow even above that level, like who will it reach? I mean, you know. So it's a good
Certainly.
first step. Companies should take a certain responsibility for their meaning, but also, and as far as I know, it was something like, okay, in the beginning, for the first couple of years, it's like companies that have at least 3,000 people working there, so they have to have a particular size, right?
Yeah.
And that's cool, but it's also like, I think everyone should do that. I don't think it's right to say just because you have, and it's supposed to be 3,000 first, and then it lowers itself down to 1,000 then and stuff. But I think it should want to be on a total different level. It should be like if you operate within the European Union and you produce in some way and you trade in some way, you have to tick certain boxes regards human rights, etc.
Yeah, true that. I really think that, like you said, it should be trade unions and not only countries on their own legislating these things. Exactly.
I'm a bit worried about the impact then. It's the same as France, because I think France is pretty forward with certain regulations, like you're not allowed to burn any kind of, overstock anymore, and etc., which is super, super cool. It's super cool for France. It doesn't do shit in Germany. You know? So make that a European thing. Like, come on, yalla. If you want to be in the EU, if you want to do business here and get like a really, really good portion of advantage in terms of taxes and stuff, then hey, you gotta comply.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we voted on a similar initiative a few months ago, and in Switzerland, and it got crashed also. But we were, yeah, like usually. We were really hoping for it. Yeah, what a surprise! Well, but the thing was, actually, it would have been so good because it entailed a law that said that, like, Swiss corporations that have factories, etc., in the global south, for example, also are attainable for their actions down there. So it would have been great, but
it's actually that's a super smart move, because this is we talk about the social dynamic and the whole theme of the whole fashion revolution kind of approach of like responsibilities and connections into supply chain, then it's a little bit like, look, it's basically colonialism, right? Like German companies, Swiss companies, and for that matter, any other company that is on a different level, or unfortunately, it's mostly inherently the westernized countries. You go to the global south, you kind of, exploit regions, you exploit countries and people with your economical pressure. And I mean, there's statistics somewhere too, and I keep referencing it that because I find it so incredibly shocking. It's a couple of years old, so don't nail me down on the exact number, but it was a study, and it's like everyone who lives in the Western world has basically 1.7 slaves in the global south.
1.7.
Wow.
And that is due to the way we consume and we act. So you could and your reaction is exactly what I thought. I was like, what the fuck? This is so not okay. And this is the thing, and it's funny because we don't think about it. Like, you just buy that iPhone, you just buy that t-shirt, you have this great new heels, and they are just half the price of the ones by Celine because they are by Zara or Mango.
Yeah, and probably more than half the price.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a 10th, maybe.
I don't buy at Celine or Zara. So I'm not really, I was lost here. So that's the thing, So it's like, what the hell? You don't think about that, and then numbers like that cross your mind, and you suddenly feel like this is why this pushback is also happening from these companies, because we have a very comfortable way of living and growing, and I personally hate the word growth by now. So we have a very comfortable way of growing and living and being very spoiled here.
Yeah.
Because there's regions
And disconnected.
in the world
Very
that
much
are wonderful.
disconnected from people who are not living in that system.
Yeah.
Because the thing
Because
is, I think we've been devaluating and appropriating so much the past, or always actually, in fashion.
Always.
So
Yeah.
so much has to change.
I mean, there's so much appropriation going on. Like, it just, as two things that I always like to mention, or that I find quite relevant, is we keep saying global south and production hubs, and that's something that also happens. I do that myself. It keeps being a rhetoric that I use. While admittedly so, it's actually not really correct, because I've seen a bunch of production places in the world, right? And first of all, for example, textile auditing. When you audit in Europe, it's hardly ever production. It's always trading or something else, because there's not really a lot of production here going on. Funnily, if you go production, you go favorably to, as one thing is Portugal, because Portugal is a bit like even upscale, because very good leather industry and stuff. That's one thing. But you would go for the, let's say, cheaper, for the like less high profile stuff, Romania, Poland.
Yeah.
And sorry to say, like Romania, for example, one of my favorite countries in the world. So cool, so nice people, so much fun to go there. In terms of how much people earn and the whole safety and everything that's going on, not so much better than if we go to global south production hubs.
It's
Same
so
as former
weird.
Yugoslavia.
Because I've been working with sustainable brands for so long now, and when you get into the conversation with consumers, as soon as people read, oh, it's made in Europe, people assume it's fair, or the wages are fair, it's safe. They think it's super sustainable. And when they see something at a store, at a sustainable fashion store that is from China, they don't buy it. Because it's also these ideas in our head that certain countries aren't good, certain countries are good, and I mean, it's so confusing as a consumer. I know that. It certainly is, but it's so much more complex and difficult also.
It just needs more education. It just needs more transparency and less detachment. And I completely agree with you. And just before I jump on the next part, just a side note here. There's right now on Arte TV, there's a really, and you should get it in the Mediatheek or library, there's a really good 30-minute documentary on fashion and textile production in former Yugoslavia, like Macedonia, Serbia, Croatia. And it's super interesting, because that's even different than Romania, because that is, especially Croatia, it's a place where we all love to go for the beaches and for the vacation.
Yeah.
But literally, it's a really good documentary showing how people get treated there, and how the textile production is working there in terms of consumer perception. And what you said with that it's confusing for consumers, it is, and I get it. And so, because you asked before in this, like, or we talked about Lieferkettengesetz, I actually think what should even be more a thing is like the legislation of sending out or giving straight up penalties for greenwashing.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, like
That's
confusing
something.
claims for clients, for consumers should not be okay, because as far as I know, and I'm not like, I'm not a big banking person or something, but there's like definitely in other businesses legal thresholds when you can't just say stuff just to make people buy something or go in contract with you in a way. So greenwashing, put a leap on that, and also just implementing it in education, because look at what happened with the food business, for example. Food is usually in trend forecasting, you say food is like 5 years ahead of everything else that's going on, and so that happened quickly, right? That suddenly everyone knows where their beef and their eggs and their vegan sausages come from. So I think that should happen in fashion too.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that too. I think that, like you said, transparency. like some labels are starting with their QR codes, and you can see where they're producing. I think that's something that a lot of labels should start doing, also for the entire supply chain. Because I don't know, for me as someone who works in the industry, but not necessarily in the supply chain, or as like you with audits, etc., it's still so difficult to make your supply chain visible or transparent for you at first, and even for your consumers. It's so difficult still, as long as you don't like build up your own supply chain from scratch. And then again, it's difficult if you do that. You're not necessarily as sustainable and an environmental. Sorry.
Yeah, it's always a question, right? Like, when are you sustainable? Like, when are you sustainable as a brand? You're never really sustainable because you produce in the end. So that's one thing. But you can do that better, right? I mean, there's a good and there's a bad way of producing. And I like when I talk to brands, or when I help brands finding their strategies in terms of sustainability, I also in a way keep saying, pick your battle, you know?
Yeah.
Because look, like if, for example, it's a really stupid example, but you just imagine it's Sunday, you're a little bit hungover, you want to order food. Where do you get your food from? You don't get it from the guy who has Mexican food, sushi, and Thai and Italian pizzas, because you think that's not going to be good. You're just going to the best pizza place in town.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the same with fashion. If I see a brand that's like, we are this and this, carbon neutral, we recycle, we are superhuman supply chain, I'm like, you can't do that. If you tell me you do that all, then it's not real. Because no company in the world, unless it's literally Nike, who should have and do have the resources to do it but don't, can afford to be that hyper monitored. You know? So that is one thing where and also you confuse consumers. So that's one thing where I'm saying, like, have the bigger picture in mind, try to act reasonably and mindful on all levels. Pick what is dear and close to you as a brand owner, to you as a brand, and to your clients, and make this your specialty when you're sustainable.
That sounds very good. Sounds like a good tip for people who want to start their business or are in the business already and want to be more sustainable. So, do you have any good labels or NGOs or producers that you know that are doing very well in the way that you just mentioned?
I mean, there's different levels, right? First of all, when we talk about NGOs, there's a couple of people actually working with that that are very, very different and very interesting points. There's a company, or there's a project that's called White Men's Clothes, and they very much look into, from a bit academic standpoint, research standpoint, but very informative, into the whole issue of clothes that get donated to, especially and particularly Africa, and what it does there with the local economy. So this project is something that I find very interesting. Garment Workers Diaries, which I believe it's something of Fashion Revolution actually, which you should find there, is a really, really interesting initiative that literally gives ideas about garment workers and their everyday life, how much they earn in different locations, what's their struggles. So you can, if you just Google that, White Men's Clothes and Garment Worker Diaries, you come to links. They are very interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of brands, a bunch actually that I'm really, really into, but it depends on which level. That is something. I guess that's always interesting. Like, there's just with anything else in fashion, there's different levels of how big they are, what's their like price class, and etc. I mean, a classic thing, and I've done a bunch of interviews for him and hosted him as a guest last year when events were still a thing. No, it was the year.
Oh.
Well, it was last year still. They're the founder of Veja. So Veja shoes, they are a global brand, but I think they are doing a really good job in being transparent, and they are very, very uncompromisable in that. Also, when you talk to them, they are like, okay, there's just no way to do that differently. But yeah, that's what I said. It's like even a bit more mainstream by now. Brand that operates like that. then I believe so. If you look a little bit in the middle ground or some of sorts, there's a really cool brand from Cuba. It's called Clandestina, and what is really fascinating about them is, and I love them personally, this idea to have brands that are not, how can I say that? Look, if you're from Copenhagen and if you're a designer and you want to be sustainable, you could do that, right? Because you have all the privilege in the world to do that. But if you are from Cuba and you want to be a sustainable fashion brand, you have a pushback. And if you still manage to pull that off and have a legit business, that's cool. So that's something where I'm like, okay. And so actually this afternoon around 4 on my Instagram, I will have a talk about exactly this topic, about sustainability narratives from Palestine, because it's the same thing as I just mentioned in Cuba. It's a whole different idea of being sustainable, and will be with a brand from Palestine that operates completely sustainable based on heritage textiles in a contemporary style. And those are the things where I'm like, this is really, really interesting and cool, because it will also, I believe that those ideas, those kind of tools that people use in this kind of locations, they will shape the ideas that we need here in the West to get out of this rut where we dug ourselves in. And on a production level, and I don't know for whom that's interesting, but I'm a big fan of Armstrong Mills. They are in India.
Yeah, I've known them.
You know them?
Yeah, I think the Dedicated produces with them.
Yeah. There's so many denim. There's some like if you wear denim, most likely every single piece of denim you wear comes from them. I think they have around 40 different mills throughout India. So big areas. And I had the privilege to spend some time with them in their headquarter location in Tamil Nadu. And they operate very, very, not as big. They don't only do sustainable stuff, but they do the majority of their production lines are even certified. And it's very, very great. So they are pretty good.
That's also, again, a good tip for everyone who wants to start in a business. I mean, their quality is quite good, actually. So
their quality is super
amazing.
But there's also, if you want to start a business and you're looking for production, my tip would be, this is really something where there's a lot of information from really, really amazing people out there right now. There's, for example, the project Resource from Canada, previously New York, now Canada. They are doing a lot when it comes to supplier management, to everything that has to do with how to design, create, and source more sustainable. There's going to be the first, how can you say that? There's going to be the first textile mill that is brought back to Canada in this century, basically, and because it's a project from a dear acquaintance of mine. She's called Esmeralda, which is, by the way, the coolest name ever. So, and she's setting up a hyper local supply chain where she grows cotton, like the literal cotton, and then with the mill in Canada, it will be spun there. So it's hyper local, and those kind of things, I believe, that's just North American ideas now, but this is the stuff we should look out for, you know?
Yes, exactly. We have this with linen, actually, or flax in Switzerland.
Oh, cool.
There's a few farmers and a collaboration between different people who are trying to start growing linen again, or flax, actually.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's not going to be mass production like Armstrong Mills, which is cool, right? But as long as it's feasible, and as long as it has a certain kind of level of like just quantity you can produce, it's a really great thing.
Yeah,
why not?
I think so too.
You don't have to ship everything to a different country and hold the whole economical and basically mental health there. You just decide to grow it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it depends so much on what you want to do. So, but working very local is always a good start, actually. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You are so welcome. That was fun. I like that. and again, I'm super sorry about the video, the camera thing.
No worries, the people had the pleasure to just see me for an hour. So.
Cool. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. And have a lovely Saturday, not Sunday. Oh God.
You too.
And good luck with your talk.
Revolution Week.
Yeah, thank
Bye.
you. Bye.